Injured Lumberjack thought he was doomed. Then the bear arrived. In the dense, ancient woods of Oregon's Cascade Range, the air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Sunlight filtered through the towering canopy, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor, where mosses and ferns thrived in the cool shade. Logan Thorne moved with practiced ease, his axe swinging in a steady rhythm as he worked on a massive Douglas fir, its trunk wide enough to dwarf him twice over. At 43, Logan was a seasoned lumberjack, his muscles honed from decades of labor, his senses attuned to the subtleties of the wilderness. He was a man of few words, preferring the company of trees and the hum of the wind to the noise of towns and crowded places. The forest was his sanctuary, a place where time moved slowly, measured by the creaking sway of ancient branches. The morning had been crisp, clouds hanging low over the distant peaks, hinting at rain. Logan welcomed the coolness, the way it cleared his mind and sharpened his focus. He surveyed the area, marking out the safest direction for the tree to fall. His fingers traced the rough bark, feeling the life within, and he murmured a quiet thanks, an old habit he'd picked up from his grandfather, who taught him that every tree felled deserved respect. "Nothing good comes from taking without gratitude, Logan," his grandfather's voice echoed in his memory, a reminder of the man who first showed him the beauty and wisdom of the forest. Satisfied with his preparations, Logan positioned himself and began the first cuts. The axe bit deep, wood splintering under his powerful swings. His breath came in steady puffs, visible in the cool air. He was lost in the rhythm, the world around him narrowing to the tree and his task. It was only when the trunk shuddered, a deep groan echoing through the woods, that he snapped back to full awareness. The tree was beginning to fall, but something was wrong. A sharp crack split the air as the trunk twisted, its massive weight shifting unpredictably. Logan's eyes widened as he realized the tree was not leaning as planned. It was turning, pivoting toward him with a terrifying inevitability. He reacted on instinct, muscles coiling as he leaped back, his boots slipping on the loose forest floor. The world tilted as the giant Douglas fir crashed down, the sound a deafening roar that shook the earth. Pain exploded through his leg, white hot and blinding. Logan screamed, the sound raw and primal, ripped from his chest as the tree pinned his leg beneath its colossal weight. His vision blurred, the canopy above spinning wildly before it settled into sharp clarity. He was trapped. The realization struck him as cold as the mountain air. The tree lay across his right leg, the pressure unbearable, a constant, crushing pain that pulsed with his heartbeat. He tried to move, his body twisting as his hands clawed at the dirt, but it was useless. The weight was too much, unyielding as stone. Logan forced himself to breathe, dragging air into his lungs despite the agony. Panic surged, hot and suffocating, and he fought to contain it. He was alone, miles from the nearest road, deep in the wilderness he loved. No one knew where he was. He preferred to work solo, far from the noise and distractions of others. It was his way, his ritual, but now that solitude was his enemy. He swallowed hard, his throat dry as dust. He had to think, had to find a way out. His axe lay just out of reach, half buried in the dirt where he had dropped it. His backpack, containing a small first aid kit and his water bottle, was further away, leaning against a fallen log. Both were useless to him now. Pain flared as he shifted, trying to ease the pressure, but the tree held firm, unmoved by his struggle. Logan gritted his teeth, a growl of frustration escaping his lips. He pounded his fists against the earth, sending dirt scattering, his anger momentarily overriding the pain. "Damn it!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the silent forest. But the woods gave no answer, indifferent to his suffering. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher, its light growing harsher as the morning faded. Logan's strength ebbed, the initial adrenaline that had fueled his fight draining away, leaving exhaustion and a cold, creeping fear. His leg was numb now, a dull throb that pulsed with his fading energy. He could feel the cold seeping into his bones, his body growing heavy as shock set in. He closed his eyes, his head sinking back against the dirt. Memories flickered in his mind, unbidden and vivid. His late wife's smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed, the smell of her hair, the warmth of her touch. She had loved the mountains, loved the wild beauty of this place as much as he did. It was why he stayed, even after she was gone, why he kept coming back to these woods to feel closer to her spirit. But now lying helpless under the weight of the fallen tree, he wondered if he would die here, alone and forgotten. The thought chilled him more than the mountain air. He wasn't ready, not like this. Logan's eyes snapped open, a flicker of defiance igniting in his chest. He would not give up, not yet. Gritting his teeth, he pushed against the earth, his arms straining as he tried to shift his body. Pain roared through him, sharp and merciless, and he choked back a scream. He had to find another way. His gaze flicked around the clearing, searching for anything that could help him. A branch, a rock, anything to use as leverage. But his vision was swimming, the forest blurring at the edges. His body was failing him, his strength slipping away. Despair coiled around his heart, cold and relentless. A rustling sound broke through the haze of pain, faint but distinct. Logan's head jerked up, his eyes locking onto the shadow moving between the trees. His breath caught as a massive shape emerged, stepping into the clearing with a fluid, powerful grace. A bear. Its fur was thick and gray, shimmering silver in the sunlight, muscles rippling beneath its coat. It was enormous, easily twice his height on all fours, its eyes dark and intelligent as they fixed on him. Logan's blood ran cold, fear flooding his senses. He was helpless, trapped and broken, and now a predator stood before him. His heart thundered, every instinct screaming at him to flee, but his body was pinned, defenseless. The bear moved closer, its head low, nostrils flaring as it took in his scent. Logan's pulse raced, his muscles locking in terror as the beast loomed over him, its shadow swallowing him whole. He braced for the end, for teeth and claws, for pain that would eclipse even the agony of his broken leg. But the bear did not attack. It stood there, watching him, its eyes impossibly calm, a glimmer of curiosity flickering in their depths. Logan's breath hitched, his fear tangling with confusion. What was it waiting for? Why hadn't it killed him? The bear moved again, this time lowering its massive head toward the fallen tree, sniffing the branches. Its claws flexed, digging into the dirt, and it began to dig. Logan's mind spun, disbelief crashing through him as he realized the impossible truth. The bear was trying to help. Logan stared in stunned silence as the massive gray bear continued to dig around the fallen tree, its powerful claws tearing through dirt and debris with astonishing precision. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing, every instinct screaming that this couldn't be real. Bears didn't help people. They were predators, forces of nature that ruled the wilderness with tooth and claw. Yet here it was, moving methodically, its huge body rippling with strength as it dug around the trunk that pinned Logan's leg. The earth shifted beneath him, the pressure on his leg easing ever so slightly, enough to send a fresh wave of pain roaring through his body. Logan gritted his teeth, biting back a scream as the agony threatened to consume him. He couldn't afford to pass out, not now, not when his life depended on understanding whatever miracle was unfolding before him. The bear paused, its head tilting as if assessing its work. Its eyes met Logan's, dark and intelligent, gleaming with an awareness that defied everything he knew about wild animals. Logan's heart hammered in his chest, fear still a cold weight in his gut, but something else stirred, a flicker of hope. Was this really happening? Could the bear truly be trying to save him? He opened his mouth, his voice raw and broken. Why are you helping me? The words felt foolish, absurd even, but they tumbled out before he could stop them. The bear blinked slowly, unbothered by his voice, and turned back to its task, resuming its relentless digging. Dirt flew, roots snapped, and the massive tree shifted again, rocking just enough to make Logan's trapped leg throb with renewed intensity. He squeezed his eyes shut, a groan escaping his lips as pain rippled through him. He focused on his breathing, forcing himself to inhale deeply, then exhale slowly, riding the waves of agony until they began to dull. When he opened his eyes, the bear had moved to the opposite side of the fallen trunk. Its body was colossal, muscle and sinew wrapped in a shimmering silver coat that caught the sunlight filtering through the trees. Logan watched, mesmerized, as the bear gripped a thick branch with its jaws and began to drag it closer. It dropped the branch near the base of the tree, then positioned it carefully, wedging it under the trunk with deliberate movements. Logan's breath hitched as realization dawned. The bear was trying to use the branch as a lever. It nudged the branch with its massive head, testing its placement, then leaned its weight into the opposite end. The tree groaned, the wood straining as the makeshift lever bent under the pressure. The trunk shifted, rising just a fraction, and Logan felt the crushing weight on his leg ease ever so slightly. He gasped, a mix of relief and pain flooding him. It wasn't enough to free him, but it was progress. The bear backed away, huffing softly as it surveyed its work. It seemed to hesitate, its dark eyes flicking toward Logan, then back to the lever. Logan's heart skipped a beat. Was it thinking? Was it actually figuring out the mechanics of leverage? He shook his head, the motion weak and disbelieving. This was madness, impossible, and yet he couldn't deny what he was seeing. The bear moved again, adjusting its stance, its massive paws pressing into the dirt as it leaned into the lever once more. The tree creaked, the ancient wood protesting, and this time the trunk lifted higher, just enough for Logan to feel the trapped muscles in his legs scream as blood flow returned. He cried out, his body arching involuntarily as pain electrified his nerves. But the weight was lessening, his legs shifting, pinned but no longer completely immobilized. Hope flared, bright and fierce. The bear continued its efforts, showing no sign of stopping. It pushed against the lever, then stepped back, repositioning itself with an intelligence that defied logic. Logan watched in awe, his fear gradually giving way to a sense of wonder. He had heard stories, old legends his grandfather used to tell, tales of spirits that took the form of animals to guide lost travelers, myths of guardians of the forest who protected the land and its creatures. But those were just stories, weren't they? Fairy tales passed down through generations, meant to teach respect for nature. Yet here he was, helpless and broken, being rescued by a creature that should have been his end. The bear grunted, its powerful muscles straining as it gave one final push. The tree lurched, the trunk rolling just enough to free Logan's leg. His body jerked as the pressure vanished, the sudden rush of pain overwhelming. He collapsed against the earth, his vision swimming as darkness threatened to pull him under. Through the haze, he felt movement, a gentle nudge against his shoulder. The bear's nose, cold and damp, pressed against him, its breath warm and steady. Logan forced his eyes open, his gaze locking with the bear's. For a brief moment, they stared at each other, man and beast, connected by something beyond comprehension. The bear's eyes were calm, wise, reflecting the dappled sunlight as they softened with an emotion Logan could only describe as compassion. Then, with a low rumble that vibrated through Logan's chest, the bear turned and disappeared into the shadows of the forest, its massive form melting into the undergrowth without a sound. Logan lay there, panting, his body trembling with pain and exhaustion. The forest seemed to exhale, the trees whispering softly as the world returned to its natural rhythm. Birds sang above, their melodies weaving through the branches, a delicate harmony that felt surreal after the chaos of his ordeal. He looked down at his leg, swollen and twisted but free. He could feel the throbbing pulse of his heartbeat, the warmth of returning circulation. Relief surged through him, tears stinging his eyes as he let out a choked, disbelieving laugh. He was alive. He was actually alive. The bear was gone. The only trace of its presence, the disturbed earth and the branch lever, still wedged under the fallen tree. Logan's gaze lingered on the lever, his mind spinning with questions that had no answers. Had the bear truly understood his plight? Had it acted out of kindness, intelligence, or something more? He didn't know. All he knew was that he had witnessed a miracle, a story no one would believe. But as the forest closed around him, whispering in a language older than time, Logan understood one thing with absolute certainty. He owed his life to the spirit of the mountain. and he would never look at the wild the same way again. Darkness began to creep through the dense canopy as the sun dipped behind the Cascade Range, casting long shadows that danced over the forest floor. Logan's body lay heavy against the cold earth, his leg throbbing with relentless pain. Every movement sent sharp jolts up his spine, but he was free, alive, against all odds. The bear's actions defied logic, its intelligence and mercy, a mystery that lingered in his mind, mingling with exhaustion and disbelief. He replayed the moments in his head, the way it had used the branch, the deliberate way it moved, calculated and purposeful. Logan shivered, not from the cold, but from the realization that everything he thought he knew about the wild had been shattered in an instant. The forest was changing, the daylight retreating, surrendering to the encroaching night. Cold shadows stretched between the trees, the temperature dropping rapidly as the air grew crisp and thin. Logan's breath puffed in front of him, visible in the dim light, his body trembling uncontrollably. He needed warmth, shelter, some way to survive the night with his injured leg. Gritting his teeth, Logan dragged himself forward, his hands clawing at the dirt as he pulled his body inch by inch toward his backpack, leaning against a fallen log. His leg was useless, a mangled weight that refused to move, sending white-hot pains searing through him whenever he tried. Each pull was agony, his shoulders burning, his nails breaking as they scraped over rocks and roots. But Logan pushed through, his will to live burning hotter than the pain. He reached the backpack, his fingers fumbling as he unzipped it and pulled out his water bottle and first aid kit. The water was cold, soothing his parched throat as he drank deeply, each gulp giving him the strength to keep moving. He rummaged through the kit, his hands shaking as he found the bandages and painkillers. The wound on his leg was swollen, purple bruises blooming beneath torn flesh. It was a miracle his bones hadn't shattered under the tree's weight, but the damage was severe. Infection was a real threat out here, miles from any help. He cleaned the wound as best he could, hissing as the antiseptic stung like fire. His hands were clumsy, exhaustion making him sloppy, but he forced himself to focus, wrapping the bandage tightly to slow the swelling. He popped 2 painkillers, swallowing them dry, praying they would dull the worst of the agony. His head was spinning, his vision blurring at the edges as he fought to stay conscious. Sleep would be dangerous. The cold would creep in, stealing his warmth and his life if he let himself slip away. Logan's eyes drooped, heavy with fatigue, his body sagging against the ground. But before darkness could claim him, a low growl rumbled through the clearing, deep and resonant, vibrating in his chest. His eyes snapped open, his heart leaping into his throat as fear jolted him awake. The bear was back, emerging from the shadows like a spirit made of dusk and earth. Its massive form moved with fluid grace, its silver-gray fur shimmering under the faint light. Logan's body went rigid, panic surging through him. He was vulnerable, broken, and now the predator had returned. Maybe it had helped him before, but that didn't mean it wouldn't kill him now. The bear stopped a few feet away, its dark eyes locked on Logan, unblinking and ancient. It huffed softly, a cloud of mist curling from its nose in the cold air. Logan's heart raced, his pulse thundering in his ears as he tried to make himself as small as possible, pressing his back against the fallen log. The bear watched him, its head tilting slightly, a curious glint in its gaze. Then, to Logan's utter disbelief, it turned away, walking to the base of a nearby tree. It pawed at the earth, its claws tearing up roots and leaves until it uncovered a small hollow. The bear settled into the makeshift den, curling its massive body into a protective ball, its back to the wind. It was making camp. Logan's mouth went dry as he watched the creature settle in, its eyes drifting closed as it lay mere feet away, guarding the clearing. It wasn't leaving. It was staying, keeping watch over him as the night fell. Logan's mind spun, his thoughts tangled and incoherent. Why? Why was it protecting him? What was this animal, this force of nature that defied every law of the wild? His chest tightened, a mixture of gratitude and awe swelling within him. Whatever the reason, this bear was his guardian tonight, standing between him and the darkness. Night descended swiftly, the forest shrouded in shadows that danced and twisted with the wind. The temperature plummeted, cold seeping into Logan's bones despite his jacket. He curled into himself, shivering uncontrollably, his injured leg throbbing with relentless pain. Sleep teased at him, whispering promises of escape from the cold and the hurt. But Logan fought it, his gaze fixed on the bear. Its form was a mountain of muscle and fur, steady and unmoving, its breath visible in the frigid air. The forest around them was alive with sounds, the whisper of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of unseen creatures. But nothing came near the clearing, not with the bear standing guard. Logan drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind floating through fragments of memory and pain. He saw his wife's face, her eyes bright with laughter as she teased him for his gruffness. Her voice echoed in his ears, warm and soft, a lullaby he longed to hear again. "You don't have to be alone, Logan," she had once told him, her fingers brushing his cheek. "The forest isn't just a place, it's alive. It watches, it listens. You're never truly alone out there." He had laughed then, dismissing her words as romantic nonsense. But now, lying broken beneath the stars with a bear keeping watch over him, her voice took on new meaning. His eyelids grew heavier, his body sinking into the earth as fatigue overwhelmed him. The pain dulled, the cold numbing his senses. A guardian spirit, ancient and wise, protecting him in his hour of need. Logan's breathing slowed, his body going limp as sleep took him, deep and dreamless. The forest watched over him, its ancient heart beating in time with the bear's steady breaths. And through the night, the guardian never moved, its eyes open and vigilant, guarding the man who had been chosen by the mountain. Logan awoke to the pale light of dawn seeping through the trees, a soft golden glow that painted the forest in shades of amber and green. His body felt heavy, his leg a throbbing mass of pain wrapped in stiff, blood-crusted bandages. He groaned, the sound raw and cracked, his throat parched from hours of shivering in the cold. The air was frigid, his breath misting before his face as he struggled to sit up, his hands bracing against the rough bark of the fallen log behind him. Memory flooded back in broken flashes, the tree falling, the unbearable weight crushing his leg. The bear. His heart jumped, his head snapping up, eyes searching the clearing with frantic urgency. And there it was, not 5 feet away, still curled at the base of the tree where it had kept watch through the night. The massive gray bear lay unmoving, its colossal form a mound of fur and muscle, peaceful and serene. Logan's breath caught as he watched it, awe mingling with fear as the events of the previous day replayed in his mind. The bear had saved him, protected him, even guarded him as he slept. Nothing about this was normal. Nothing about this made sense. Yet the evidence lay right before his eyes, a living impossibility that defied every law of nature he thought he knew. As if sensing his gaze, the bear stirred, its eyes flickering open, dark and intelligent as they settled on him. Logan's body went rigid, his instincts screaming at him to flee, but his broken leg made that a cruel joke. All he could do was stare, heart pounding as the bear regarded him with that same calm curiosity. It stretched, its body unfolding with a powerful grace that spoke of raw strength, then rose to its feet, towering over Logan. Its shadow fell across him, cold and vast, and Logan's breath hitched, fear locking his muscles as he braced for the end. But the bear merely blinked, huffing softly before turning away, its head low as it sniffed the air. It moved to the edge of the clearing, its massive paws silent on the forest floor as it disappeared into the undergrowth, vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared. Logan released a shuddering breath, his body sagging against the log as tension drained from his limbs. It was gone. Relief flooded him, chased swiftly by a hollow ache he didn't understand. He should be glad the beast was gone, grateful that it hadn't turned on him. Yet he felt strangely abandoned, vulnerable without its presence. Shaking his head, Logan forced himself to focus on survival. The bear had saved him, yes, but it wasn't coming back. He was still alone, injured and stranded miles from help. If he wanted to live, he needed to move, to find a way out of this wilderness before his body gave out. His leg was a swollen, throbbing mess, every nerve screaming in protest as he shifted, trying to ease the pressure. He clenched his teeth, stifling a groan as he unwrapped the blood-soaked bandages, his stomach churning at the sight of the mangled flesh beneath. The bruising was worse now, the skin a sickly mix of purple and black, swollen tight around the jagged gash that ran down his calf. It wasn't broken, not completely, but the muscle was shredded and infection was a real danger. He had to keep it clean, had to keep moving, or he'd die out here, alone and forgotten. Logan rummaged through his backpack, finding his water bottle half empty and his food supply dwindling. He chewed on a protein bar, forcing himself to eat despite his nausea, then took another dose of painkillers, praying they'd dull the worst of the pain. He needed a crutch, something to help him stand, to move through the forest without dragging himself through the dirt. His gaze flicked to the fallen branches scattered around the clearing, broken limbs from the ancient Douglas fir that had nearly ended him. Gritting his teeth, Logan crawled forward, his body protesting every movement as he reached for a sturdy branch, testing its weight. It was thick, rough bark digging into his palms, but it held his weight as he leaned on it, bracing himself. He inhaled sharply, summoning what strength he had left, then pushed up, his legs screaming as he forced it to bear his weight. White-hot pain shot through him, his vision blurring as the world tilted, but he held on, gripping the makeshift crutch with trembling hands as he found his balance. He was standing, barely, but it was enough. He tested his weight, hobbling a few steps, each movement agony as his injured leg dragged behind him. The world spun, his body swaying as dizziness threatened to drop him back to the ground. But Logan clenched his jaw, his will to survive anchoring him. He wouldn't die here, not like this, not after everything he'd survived. Glaring at the twisted earth where the tree had pinned him, Logan felt a spark of defiance flare in his chest. He was still breathing, still fighting, and he wasn't giving up. A rustling sound broke the silence, faint but unmistakable. Logan froze, his body tensing as his head snapped toward the undergrowth. The bear reemerged, its silver-gray fur shimmering in the morning light, a flash of movement between the trees. Logan's heart skipped, his pulse thundering in his ears as he watched the creature pad toward him, its massive head low, eyes fixed on his injured leg. Panic surged, his fingers tightening on the crutch as he staggered back, his voice cracking. "Stay back!" But the bear showed no aggression, no threat in its posture. It stopped a few feet away, its head tilting as it dropped something at Logan's feet. A bundle of leaves and moss, damp and fragrant. Logan stared at the bundle, confusion twisting his gut. What was this? Why would a bear bring him plants? He looked back at the animal, its gaze steady and calm, unblinking as it watched him. An idea sparked, absurd and impossible, yet it clawed at his mind. Was it medicine? He knelt, wincing as his leg flared with pain, and picked up the bundle, his fingers brushing the leaves. He recognized them, yarrow and willow bark, wild herbs his grandfather had taught him about, natural remedies for pain and infection. The knowledge hit him like a blow, his mind reeling as he looked up at the bear. It had brought him medicine. It was helping him heal. The bear huffed softly, its eyes reflecting the morning light, a spark of wisdom flickering in their depths. Then it turned, slipping back into the shadows, its form melting into the forest without a sound. Logan sank back, the herbs clutched in his trembling hands, his chest tight with emotions he couldn't name. Gratitude, awe, fear, and something deeper, an understanding that went beyond words. This bear was no ordinary creature. It was a guardian, a protector, and for reasons he couldn't begin to fathom, it had chosen him. Logan's hands trembled as he stared at the bundle of herbs resting in his lap, the green leaves and twisted roots fragrant with the sharp, earthy scent of the forest. Yarrow and willow bark, plants his grandfather once showed him during long hikes through these very woods. Their uses whispered like old secrets passed down through generations. Yarrow for healing wounds, to stop bleeding and fight infection. Willow bark for pain, nature's aspirin. Logan's throat tightened, The memory of his grandfather's gnarled hands demonstrating how to chew the bark to numb toothaches flashing vividly before his eyes. But those lessons were fragments of a past life, half-forgotten scraps he never thought he'd need. And yet here he was, his leg mangled and burning with pain, alive only because a bear, a creature of muscle and claw, had delivered him medicine. His gaze lifted to the edge of the clearing where the bear had disappeared, the undergrowth still trembling from its passing. The forest was silent, the morning light filtering through the trees in golden shafts that painted the world in soft hues. Logan's pulse thrummed in his ears, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and awe. This wasn't natural. It defied everything he knew about the wild. Bears didn't save men. They hunted, they survived, they did not heal. Yet this one had brought him herbs, the very ones he needed to fight the infection spreading through his leg. His mind reeled, questions spiraling faster than he could grasp. Why was it helping him? How did it know? He shook his head, forcing himself to focus. The answers didn't matter, not right now. What mattered was survival. He was alive, and as impossible as it seemed, the bear had given him a chance to stay that way. Gritting his teeth, Logan set to work, his fingers clumsy and stiff from the cold. He crushed the yarrow leaves between his palms, releasing their bitter, peppery scent, and packed them against his wound, wincing as the herbs stung his torn flesh. His vision blurred with pain, his breath hitching as he tightened the bandage around his leg, securing the poultice in place. It was crude, makeshift, but it would do. The willow bark was next, its rough surface dry and splintery beneath his fingers. Logan hesitated, his mind flashing back to his grandfather's weathered face. The old man's voice a low murmur. "Chew it slowly, boy. Let the juice sit under your tongue. Pain's just the body's way of talking. Sometimes you've got to tell it to hush." Logan smiled faintly, the memory warming him more than the weak sunlight. He followed his grandfather's instructions, breaking off a piece of bark and chewing carefully, his mouth filling with the bitter, woody flavor. The juice coated his tongue, numbing his gums, and he felt the pain in his leg dull, its sharp edges blunted by the natural anesthetic. Relief washed over him, his muscles relaxing for the first time since the accident. It was working. He leaned back against the fallen log, his body sagging with exhaustion. The morning was growing warmer, the chill of the night giving way to a crisp breeze that rustled the leaves above. Logan closed his eyes, his thoughts drifting like smoke on the wind. He saw his wife's face again, her eyes alight with laughter as she spun through a field of wildflowers, her golden hair streaming behind her. She loved this place, loved the forest and its secrets. She always spoke of the mountains as if they were alive, as if they could hear her whispers. Logan never believed her, never shared her reverence for the land. But now he was beginning to understand. A branch snapped nearby, the sound sharp and sudden, yanking him back to the present. Logan's eyes flew open, his heart lurching as his gaze darted toward the noise. The bear stood at the edge of the clearing, half hidden in shadow, its silver-gray fur gleaming in the dappled light. Logan's body went rigid, his pulse thundering as he gripped his makeshift crutch, the wood rough and splintering beneath his fingers. The bear watched him, its dark eyes calm and steady, reflecting the golden sunlight. There was no malice in its posture, no aggression, only a curious intelligence that sent chills down Logan's spine. He swallowed, his mouth dry, fear curling through his gut. "What are you?" he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. The bear tilted its head, a movement so eerily human that Logan's skin prickled. It took a step forward, its massive paws silent on the forest floor, muscles rippling beneath its coat. Logan's heart seized, his fingers digging into the crutch as he braced himself. But the bear stopped, its nose lifting to scent the air, its body relaxed and unthreatening. It was as if it were checking on him, making sure he was still alive. The realization hit him like a punch, his mind spinning. This bear wasn't just a predator, it was his guardian, his protector in this wild and unforgiving place. It had saved him from the tree, given him medicine, and now it watched over him, its presence a silent promise of safety. Logan's chest tightened, his eyes burning with tears he refused to shed. He had always been alone, ever since his wife's death, drifting through life with a hollow ache that nothing could fill. But here, in the heart of the forest, abandoned and broken, he had found an ally in the most unlikely of creatures. The bear huffed softly, the sound low and musical, vibrating through the clearing. Its eyes met Logan's, dark and ancient, filled with a wisdom that transcended time. Logan's breath caught, his body frozen as an understanding passed between them, silent and profound. This was more than instinct, more than animal curiosity. This was connection, pure and unbreakable. The bear turned, its body moving with fluid grace as it slipped back into the undergrowth, its silver fur melting into the shadows. Logan watched it go, his heart aching as the forest swallowed its form, leaving him alone once more. But the fear was gone, replaced by a quiet certainty that he couldn't explain. The bear would be back. It wasn't done with him yet. The wind whispered through the trees, a soft murmur that carried the scent of pine and earth, wrapping around Logan like a blanket. He closed his eyes, his body sagging with relief as he let himself rest. The pain in his leg a distant throb beneath the soothing numbness of the willow bark. He was still trapped, still broken and lost in the wilderness, but he was not alone, not anymore. The bear was watching over him, a guardian spirit sent by the mountain itself. Logan smiled, the warmth of the sun on his face, his heart beating in time with the forest's ancient rhythm. He was beginning to believe in magic again. Days blurred together as Logan fought to survive, his world shrinking to the forest clearing and the daily struggle to keep his leg from rotting beneath him. The pain was relentless, a constant throbbing reminder of his frailty, his mortality. Each morning he woke shivering from the cold, his muscles stiff and aching, his stomach gnawing with hunger. The herbs the bear brought were the only reason he was still alive. Every dawn, without fail, the massive gray creature appeared at the edge of the clearing, silent and watchful. It never came closer than a few feet, always keeping a respectful distance, its eyes gleaming with a calm intelligence that sent chills down Logan's spine. It would set down a bundle of plants, yarrow, willow bark, sometimes wild berries or nuts, then melt back into the forest as silently as it had arrived. Logan had stopped fearing it. Somewhere between pain and delirium, terror had given way to trust. He began to wait for it each morning, his heart leaping when he heard the familiar rustle of undergrowth, his spirits lifting as the bear's silver-gray fur shimmered in the morning light. It was a beacon of hope, a constant in his chaotic, broken world. The herbs were saving him, their healing power undeniable. The swelling in his leg had lessened, the angry red infection fading to a dull ache. He was getting stronger, his body mending slowly, painfully. But his leg was still useless, the muscles shredded, the tendons torn. He couldn't stand on his own, could barely drag himself from the makeshift bed he'd built of leaves and moss. Without help, he would die out here. On the 5th day, Logan looked at the bear and made his decision. He would have to trust it, truly trust it, if he wanted to survive. His voice was hoarse, unused, but he forced the words out, his heart pounding. "I need help," he croaked, his eyes locked on the bear's dark, knowing gaze. "I can't walk. I need to get out of here. Can you help me?" The words felt foolish, absurd, but they hung in the air, fragile and desperate. The bear blinked slowly, its head tilting, as if considering his plea. For a heartbeat, nothing happened, and Logan's hope wavered, embarrassment flooding him. He was talking to a bear as if it could understand him. He was losing his mind. But then the bear moved, its massive body flowing with a powerful grace as it stepped closer. Logan's breath caught, his muscles tensing as fear shot through him, his instincts screaming to run even though his body couldn't obey. The bear was enormous, a wall of fur and muscle, its shoulders rolling like waves beneath its coat. It stopped just a foot away, its head lowering until its nose was level with Logan's face, its warm breath puffing against his skin. Logan's heart hammered, his pulse roaring in his ears. He could see every detail, the rough black skin of its nose, the flecks of silver in its fur, the deep ancient wisdom in its eyes. They were so close, man and beast, their breaths mingling in the cold morning air. Time slowed, the world narrowing to that single, impossible moment. Logan's fear dissolved, replaced by a calm certainty that this bear would not harm him. It huffed softly, a low musical sound that rumbled through Logan's chest, then turned, its body moving with liquid power as it padded to his side. Logan watched, stunned, as the bear crouched low, its shoulders dipping, its massive head twisting to look back at him, eyes patient and expectant. It wanted him to climb on its back. His mind rebelled, his sense of reality fraying as he stared at the creature, his heart thudding. This was madness, pure, unfiltered madness. But the bear waited, its eyes steady and calm, its body a solid, unyielding anchor in Logan's shattered world. His hands trembled as he reached out, his fingers brushing the thick, coarse fur. It was softer than he expected, warm and alive beneath his touch. The bear remained perfectly still, its breathing slow and steady, its body a mountain of warmth and strength. Logan's chest tightened, emotion swelling as he gripped the fur tighter, his fingers curling into the dense pelt. This creature had saved his life, was offering him a chance to escape this place that wanted to bury him. It was his only hope. With a strangled groan, Logan hauled himself onto the bear's back, his injured leg trailing uselessly behind him. Pain flared, sharp and brutal, stealing his breath, but he held on, his arms wrapped around the bear's neck, his face pressed against the warm fur. It smelled of earth and rain, a wild, musky scent that filled his lungs as he buried his face in its coat, fighting the tears that burned his eyes. The bear rose slowly, carefully, its body lifting with the same deliberate patience it had shown since the beginning. Logan's stomach flipped, his head spinning as the world tilted, but he tightened his grip, his body curling instinctively around the bear's powerful shoulders. It stood fully, its form towering above the ground, massive and solid beneath him. Logan's heart raced, terror and exhilaration tangling in his chest as the bear began to move, its muscles rolling in a rhythm that was impossibly smooth for such a gigantic creature. It walked slowly at first, testing his weight, its paws silent on the forest floor, then quickened its pace, weaving between the trees with the grace of a shadow. Logan clung to its back, his head resting against the thick fur, his body swaying with the bear's movements. The forest blurred around them, the world a mosaic of green and gold as sunlight filtered through the branches above. The bear's warmth seeped into him, its body a living furnace that chased away the cold, its strength a steady, grounding force beneath him. Logan's fear melted away, his pulse slowing as he matched his breathing to the bear's, his heart finding a rhythm that echoed the creature's powerful strides. They moved as one, man and beast, gliding through the ancient woods as if they had been born to travel together. Time lost meaning, the hours slipping by as the bear carried him through the mountains, over rocky hills and through babbling streams, its steps never faltering. Logan drifted in and out of consciousness, his exhaustion catching up to him, the pain in his leg a dull throb beneath the soothing numbness of the willow bark. He was safe, he knew that now. Safe in the care of this guardian spirit, this creature of myth and legend, a protector sent by the mountain itself. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, the bear slowed, its body hunching as it carefully lowered Logan to the ground, its movements gentle and deliberate. Logan's eyes fluttered open, his vision hazy as he looked up at his savior, his heart full to bursting. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice raw with gratitude. The bear huffed softly, its dark eyes warm and knowing, then turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving Logan alone beneath the ancient trees, his soul forever changed. Logan awoke to the soft murmur of voices, distant and echoing, blending with the whisper of the wind through the trees. His body was heavy, every muscle aching, his leg a throbbing weight that pulsed with dull, relentless pain. But he was warm, wrapped in thick blankets that smelled of wood smoke and wool. His eyes fluttered open, blinking against the soft light filtering through a window above him. A wooden ceiling loomed overhead, rough beams crisscrossing in shadows that danced with the flicker of firelight. He was indoors, sheltered, safe. The realization struck him like a bolt, his heart skipping as he struggled to sit up, his body protesting with sharp pangs of agony. A firm hand pressed against his shoulder, gently easing him back down. "Easy now. Don't go rushing off just yet," a deep voice soothed, calm and steady. Logan's gaze focused on a face, weathered and strong, framed by silver hair and a beard that spoke of age and wisdom. The man's eyes were kind, pale blue and crinkled at the corners, his expression warm with relief. "Thought we'd lost you for a bit there," he continued, his voice low and gravelly. "Found you half dead on the old logging road. Lucky I was out checking the traps, or you might have been a goner." Logan's heart stuttered, his mind racing to piece together the fractured memories that spun through his head. The forest, the tree, the pain, and the bear. His throat tightened, his eyes widening as he tried to speak, his voice cracking. The bear. The man's face softened, his brow furrowing with curiosity. "Bear? Didn't see any bear. Just you lying there, looking like you'd wrestled with a mountain and lost." Logan's mouth went dry, confusion swirling in his mind. Had he imagined it? The creature of silver fur and ancient eyes? The guardian that saved his life? It felt real, vivid and sharp. The memory of its warmth, its power, the way it carried him through the forest like a spirit made of shadow and light. But as he looked around the small cabin, the world grounded and solid, doubt crept in. Maybe the pain and fever had broken his mind. Maybe he had dreamed it all. The man chuckled softly, pulling a chair closer to the bed as he settled in. His body relaxed with the ease of someone accustomed to solitude. "Name's Samuel. Live up here on the mountain. Keep mostly to myself. Don't get visitors often, and certainly not half-dead lumberjacks. Care to share your name, son?" Logan swallowed, his throat raw and aching, but he managed to rasp out, "Logan." Logan Thorne. Samuel's eyes widened, a spark of recognition flickering in their depths. "Thorne? Well, I'll be. I knew your granddaddy. Used to cut timber with him back in the day. Old Jacob Thorne was one of the best. Taught me half of what I know about this mountain." He grinned, his face lighting up with nostalgia. "Stubborn as a mule, though. Guess that runs in the family." Logan managed a weak laugh, the sound rough and broken, but it eased some of the tension in his chest. "Yeah, stubborn all right," he admitted, his thoughts drifting to his grandfather, to the old man's stories of the mountain spirits, of the guardians that watched over those who respected the land. Logan's heart ached, his eyes burning as he whispered. He used to say, the forest was alive, that it listened, that it protected its own. Samuel's gaze grew distant, his expression softening as he nodded slowly. Jacob always did have a way with stories. Said the spirits were real, ancient as the mountain itself. Some folks called him crazy, but me, I always believed him. Seen too many things out here that defy explanation. Logan's chest tightened, his pulse quickening as hope flared. "You believe him?" he asked, his voice trembling. Samuel's eyes flicked to Logan's injured leg, the makeshift bandages wrapped expertly with poultices of yarrow and moss. "I do," he murmured, his voice low. "And seeing you here, alive with those herbs packed just right, well, that's proof enough for me." He looked up, his gaze piercing and knowing. "Yarrow and willow bark, not many know how to use them proper. Yet someone did. Someone saved your life out there." Logan's heart stuttered, his breath catching as the image of the bear rose before his eyes, its silver fur shimmering in the dawn light, its eyes dark and ancient, filled with wisdom and compassion. "It was real," Logan choked, his voice breaking. "The bear, it saved me. It dug me out, brought me herbs, carried me here. I thought I was hallucinating, but it was real." Samuel didn't laugh, didn't scoff or shake his head. Instead, he leaned back, his expression solemn. "The Silver Guardian," he whispered, his voice reverent. Logan frowned, confusion knitting his brow. "Silver Guardian?" Samuel nodded, his eyes gleaming with a deep, reverent respect. "An old legend, as old as the mountain itself. They say a great bear roams these woods, born from the spirit of the earth, a protector of the land and all who honor it, a creature of wisdom, ancient as stone, with fur that shines like silver. It watches over those in need, those who respect the forest's heart. Logan's breath shuddered, his chest tight with emotion as Samuel's words wrapped around him like a blessing. "I didn't believe the stories," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I thought they were just myths, but it saved me. It protected me." Samuel smiled, his face gentle with understanding. "Maybe now you see what your granddaddy saw. Maybe now you know why he loved this place so much. The mountain watches over its own, Logan, and it chose you." Logan's eyes burned, tears slipping free as he looked down at his leg, the herbs still clinging to his skin, their healing power a testament to the spirit that had guided him. He was alive because the mountain had protected him, because a creature of legend had shown him mercy. He closed his eyes, his heart swelling with gratitude and awe. The Silver Guardian was real, a living myth that walked these woods, ancient and wise. And it had saved him, cradled him in its warmth, carried him through darkness to safety. A soft wind rustled outside, whispering through the trees, and Logan swore he heard a low, musical huff, a sound like laughter on the breeze. He smiled, his chest warm as he whispered, "Thank you." Somewhere in the forest, a shadow moved, silver fur shimmering as the great bear watched over the cabin, its dark eyes gleaming with a wisdom beyond time. Then it turned, melting into the shadows, its duty fulfilled, the mountain's heart beating steady and strong. The Guardian had protected its own once more. This story reminds us of the profound bond between humans and nature, a connection often forgotten in our modern lives. Logan's journey is one of survival, courage, and transformation. Faced with overwhelming adversity, he learns that the wild is not merely a place of danger, but also one of compassion and wisdom. The Silver Guardian symbolizes the spirit of the earth, teaching us that respect and reverence for nature can lead to unexpected miracles. In his darkest hour, Logan discovered not just the strength to survive, but also a deeper understanding of life's interconnectedness. This tale invites us to reflect on how we view the natural world, not as an enemy to conquer, but as a powerful ally to honor and protect. It's a reminder that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and hope can find us even when we feel most alone. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed the story, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with others who need a little hope, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales of courage and wonder.